So let's imagine this. We have a high federal official that is accused of betraying the public trust. So the country's furious. The press is just screaming from the rooftops. The people, the crowds are just demanding justice. The government feels like it's on shaky ground altogether. Now, just ask yourself, who should decide whether this official loses their office and maybe their place in history? And that's the question that Alexander Hamilton's trying to tackle in Federalist number 65. He's back, and he gives a pretty direct answer. And he says that only the Senate is capable of handling something this politically explosive. I'm Matt Haskell. I'm a high school history and civics teacher, and we're going through all of the Federalist Papers up to number 85, and we got 20 to go here with number 65. So let's take a deep dive into it, and let's go ahead and set the stage. So, impeachment. It's not a criminal proceeding. It is not a civil case. Hamilton calls it a method of national inquest into the conduct of public men. So, in other words, Hamilton is saying that impeachment is the people investigating themselves through their representatives. And that requires several things. It requires judgment and stability, insulation from, just temporary public rage, and also political maturity. The House is responsible for levying accusations, and the Senate provides the judgment. And this division, according to Hamilton, is the only way impeachment can work in a republic. His core argument, his main claim here, is that impeachments deal with offenses rising from the abuse or the violation of the public trust. And these offenses are inherently political. They're not political as in like partisan gossip, but they're more political as in national character or public safety, abuse of power, and constitutional order. Because the stakes are enormous, impeachments will always stir up public passions. So, only a steady, experienced, smaller chamber can judge fairly when the whole nation is watching. Now, some had argued that the Supreme Court should try the impeachment cases, and Hamilton, in his argument, rejects this instantly. He feels like the courts are too small, they're too isolated, they're not representative, they're not politically accountable, and they are vulnerable to executive pressure. And this is the key: impeachments may involve officials who appointed the judgments themselves, which would then put the judges in a position that would be inappropriate or awkward or, possibly corrupting. The judiciary handles interpreting the law. Impeachments, that handles political danger. And we have to keep these things separate. So, why not a special commission? Some proposed a special body of citizens or state representatives. And Hamilton said that's even worse. Because temporary commissions lack experience or continuity, any authority, accountability, or just legitimacy. And their creation would itself become political. So impeachment requires an institution that already exists, is already trusted, and belongs to the constitutional framework. So, why the Senate? Why is it the right body? Hamilton gives 4 reasons. First is the size and stability. The Senate is large enough to be representative, but small enough to deliberate carefully. His second point is that there needs to be experience and maturity. Senators are older, they're seasoned, and they're more likely to resist sudden passions. Thirdly, there's constitutional independence. The Senate stands between the president, the courts, and the people. And finally, there's public accountability. Senators answer to voters, but not so frequently that they must fear some type of immediate backlash. And this blend of independence and responsibility is exactly what impeachment demands. Now, there is a political nature to impeachment. Hamilton makes a famous observation. Impeachment cases will, according to him, agitate the passions of the whole community. So in other words, impeachment turns the entire country into a jury. And he predicts things like party conflict or media frenzy, factional rage, public demonstrations, scorched earth rhetoric, accusations of bias. And does any of this, sound familiar? Well, Hamilton knew that impeachment would always be messy. There is no way to try and make it calm or neutral. But a Senate trial is the best possible safeguard against chaos and manipulation. So Hamilton will go on to warn that impeachment trials may decide guilt not by evidence, but by party loyalty, personal rivalries, public pressure, political calculation, and factional warfare. And he admits that this is a danger, but he argues that every other option is worse. A republic must trust some institution to make difficult, emotionally charged decisions, and the Senate is that institution. Now, when the president is impeached, the Chief Justice presides over the trial. That's spelled out in the Constitution. Why? If he argued against the Supreme Court. Well, Hamilton says to avoid the vice president presiding over a conflict of interest, because the vice president is the president of the Senate. The Supreme Court Chief Justice is there to add legitimacy, to enforce fair procedure, and also to place a neutral figure in the chair. Now, this is supposed to reinforce the Senate's role without turning the trial into this, presidential game, being a pawn in the president's game. Now, Hamilton's reasoning, his logic here, his 5 points. Impeachment deals with violations of the public trust. So, these violations are political and not purely legal. The judiciary cannot handle such political cases. A special commission would be unstable and illegitimate. And only the Senate has the size, the stability, and the maturity to judge fairly. So there's number 65 and 5 easy steps. Now, Hamilton's tone, well, this essay is Hamilton as a realist. He's cynical about political factions, upcoming political parties, yet he's confident in the constitutional structure. He does warn us that impeachment will be messy and that emotions will run high, that party conflict will dominate, and no institution is perfect. But the Senate, flawed as it is, remains the best available location, tribunal, process. Now, Hamilton's moral message is that no republic can survive if officials can violate the public trust without fear of judgment. Impeachment is not revenge. It's accountability at the highest level. And accountability requires a body that is wide enough, wise enough, broad enough, independent enough, and stable enough to weigh the guilt without collapsing into chaos. That is the Senate's duty. Now, Federalist number 65 remains the foundation of every impeachment debate in American history. Hamilton's predictions have come true in, political division, national passion, questions of legitimacy, arguments about evidence, and concerns about partisanship. And his answer remains this. Imperfect as it is, the Senate is the least dangerous place to make the most dangerous judgment. Now, our takeaways from this particular episode: impeachment is a political remedy for political misconduct. The judiciary cannot handle impeachment without compromising neutrality. And finally, the Senate, despite its flaws, is the only body capable of delivering fair judgment. Number 65 explains why impeachment lives in the Senate and why it will always be dramatic and divisive. Hamilton believed the Senate structure gives it strength and stability to rise above temporary passions and protect the republic from abuses of power. Impeachment isn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be possible. If this particular episode helped you understand impeachment's constitutional logic, hopefully you'll want to stick around for number 66. This is where Hamilton continues the impeachment discussion and is going to go and answer some critics of his arguments rather directly. Thanks a lot for hanging around from this one, and I'll see you with 66.